Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here,
Yeah, and Bridget, hello.
and here we are on number 62.
Mm.
That's a day short of 63,
Yeah, apart from that,
which will be
it's a
nine
day more
weeks.
than 61. I think that's about it, really.
Yes. We continue to have most interesting and actually very moving communications from people. One that really touched my heart was from someone who, everywhere she goes or lives, takes a photograph with her of herself and her mum and dad when she was 3
Mm.
and on holiday, and it's a little golden moment.
Mm.
And when things haven't gone as you hoped, prayed they would, sometimes you need those things to remember. And the other was a story about absolutely calamitous attempt to make things come right, which I won't go into detail about, but
No, but it does remind us, doesn't it, that holidays don't automatically mean that you just get on with your nearest and dearest and everything's
well, I think
wonderful.
everybody knows that. This one ended in total calamity,
Absolute.
but it was
But they recovered.
amusing, but I mean, terrible, terrible,
Yeah.
terrible. Anyway, thank you very much for all those. We love all your communications. We really, really do.
Well, today is that special day, that sort of significant day, isn't it? June the 1st. And I think there has been a kind of feeling of hanging on for June the 1st, as though June the 1st is a sort of golden day. But of course, as soon as you get to it, you realise that there's still no clear finish line, that we're still kind of bobbing about in the water, not quite sure how the heck we're going to get to that shore.
Yeah.
You know, some children are going back to school, but I think the whole country has got back to school nerves. There's a sort
Yeah.
of anxious feeling. I was talking to somebody in the queue outside Sainsbury's yesterday, and she looked so completely together and fine. And I spoke to her, and it turned out it was the first time she'd ventured out since the beginning of all this, because she'd been shielding her husband, who's now in hospital, not with the virus, but that sense of fear. And she said, I don't know what to do. She said, what do you do? And I think I felt that quite often. What do you do? How do you work through this strange, peculiar thing of queuing and one-way systems? There's a lot of fear. I mean, I think there's a lot of fear, isn't there, about this idea of people not taking it seriously. And
There's a lot of fear about, and those lines are odd, aren't they? I mean, seeing people 10 feet apart standing in a silent line is so alien to everything we've ever known.
It really is. And then, as we've said before, the fear of this unknown terror that might be lurking in the next person. But also, I've discovered in myself there's quite a fear of being told off.
Well, there always has been. You always
Well,
have had
maybe,
a fear of being
maybe
told
there
off.
always has been. And
In
maybe
fact, you
it's
should have conquered it by now. It's about time you really sorted
all
that
right,
out.
but I'm not the only one I know. There's a sort of worry, a
Yes,
worry
I
that
know,
maybe
I
you're
know.
getting it wrong.
Well, just bear in mind what happened to one of our sons when he was very little, and he was at junior school. He was actually started quite early,
He
didn't
was
he,
only
at the school?
4.
And it was quite awe-inspiring for him being there, and he had to be picked up in a kind of school vehicle and taken to school every day. And one day he came home and he was in a terrible state, and he wouldn't tell us what it was. And a couple of jam sandwiches later, he finally told us what had gone wrong. That morning, the head mistress, what was her name? Mrs.
Sure.
Shaw, yeah, who, but Matthew was about as important as the President of the United States.
Far
Well,
more.
I don't think we'll
Far
use that,
more when
that
you're
metaphor.
No, no.
Anyway, there she was, and she announced to the whole school, she said, if anyone brings money to school, they are going to be in very serious trouble with me. They'd obviously had trouble with people bringing money to school. So later that day in the playground, my little son put his hand in his pocket, pulled it out, not realising there was a 2-shilling piece in there. No, if you remember them, pulled it out, and it went jingling and jangling along the playground. And a big girl came along. This is his version. And the big girl said, I'm going to tell Mrs. Shaw about you. You brought money to school, and you're going to be in big trouble. And he was really, really frightened.
He was so frightened.
So I was thinking, what can I do that will make this work out all right? And I had this idea. I tell you what I did. I got a piece of notepaper and I wrote a letter to Mrs. Shaw. And I said, "Dear Mrs. Shaw," and I said my son's name. He's really frightened that you're going to tell him off very badly today for bringing money to school. And I just want to challenge you to a duel on the hill overlooking the school. It can be guns or swords or anything you like. But the point is, if I win, you don't tell him off. And if you win, you can tell him off. How would that be?
You didn't tell Matt,
No, of course not.
And you didn't tell me either.
He wouldn't have gone to school.
No, and I wouldn't have let him.
No, well, there we are. So I sealed it up, gave it to Matt, and Matt just said, "Go on, take it to Mrs. Shaw. Give it to somebody to give to Mrs. Shaw, will you?" So he went off to school, and he came back in the evening with a note from Mrs. Shaw, and we opened it, and it said, "Dear Mr. Plass, thank you very much for your letter. We all had a really good laugh about it, and I'm really glad that he didn't feel he was going to be pretty badly told off, and I certainly wasn't going to." And she said, "And I never intended to frighten the little ones at the back. I think that's the problem." And I think I don't want to make a crude metaphor, but for Christians or other people in any faith, I don't always have to try and include, because these things happen everywhere, that you can think you are a little one who's going to be really thundered on.
Yeah.
And I tell you, God is never out to hit the little ones at the back. And we count ourselves
tough sometimes
as
with the big ones at the front.
We count ourselves as little ones at the back as well. Well, that's absolutely right, yeah. It can be very tough with those who take him on, but try and chill. Try and chill.
It's important during this time as well, isn't it, to think, if you like, now this is, you said about difficult metaphors, this is really complicated. Let's lose little ones at the back and think about what Paul said about the body, because what he said is that the fragile bits of you, the tender parts of you, are right inside the really strong outside. So your heart, your lungs, these bits of you have a shield of ribs.
Yeah.
Well, if we take that to think not just as the body of the church, which is always important, and one of our pet hates is when the tender parts, the people who are not very strong, if you like, going back to the little ones at the back, get shoved outside, and there's a strong centre, and all the people who are a bit fragile are sort of on the edge. But I think it's also about us, isn't it? And that we have to be very careful as we go forward, as we go into this very, very uncertain time, that we hold on to the person who is us inside, the person who feels things and thinks things and isn't quite sure, and look after them.
I think that's absolutely right, to guard the child in us.
Yeah.
And doesn't Paul love a metaphor?
Yeah,
I think every now and then he must have said to Luke, "Look at this, I've just had this fantastic idea." I love to think of that. But yeah, for the little ones. And you saying that reminds me, when we went to a thing called Take 7 years ago, which was the last of the Royal Week events, I think. And there was a speaker there, very smart speaker, very fluent and very powerful. And I went in for most of it, and I came out because I had to go and get the kids or something, walked along the corridor around the back, and a woman came round the corner and sort of crashed into me. So I picked her up, and I said, "Oh, have you been in the talk?" She said, "Oh yeah, just come out, got to go and do something." So I said, "Oh, what did you think of the talk?" She said, "Oh, it was great, but I can't be that. I can't be part of that." She said, I just wash up and clean and look after the kids. I don't feel I belong in what he's talking about." And it kind of broke my heart, because surely, if anything, a talk or a message or a communication that is from Jesus is going to build people up. It's not going to knock them down. And especially that lady who is working so hard to make sure the lives of those around us work out okay.
Yeah, well, of course, it is a particular thing. And in fact, I remember it at one of these big festivals. When you're looking after children, it's a particular period in your life where
Yes, it is,
you
yes.
try and pray, you bend down, you think, I'm really going to communicate with God. And somebody climbs on your back, or somebody needs to go to the toilet, or somebody. And those pressures, they are particular for that period, really. It's very easy. Sorry if it's just for women, but I think it's particularly easy for women to feel so second class when they're struggling with all those things when their children are young and at different stages in our life. I mean, redundancy can make you feel there's so many things, aren't there, that can just make you feel not great, really. And you hear a talk that makes you feel worse, as you say. It can't be right. It can't be right.
I think in the end, the quality of kindness is so crucial, isn't it?
Yeah.
Be kind, if you can, to yourself and to others. It sounds simple. It's not easy.
No.
But I think if you ask me about the central quality of God, it is kindness, I think. And there are lots of other problems, but I think that's true. Now, some news from us. The next No Shore on Site, tomorrow's will be our final one. We're feeling we've reached the point now where things are probably going to change, and the crucial question now is, how do we get on negotiating our way to the shore, to continue our long-ranging metaphor? And so from this week, from this Friday, we're going to be recording every Friday. We're going to be there every Friday. And our new title, which we have argued over some length, actually it was quite a civilized discussion, wasn't it?
I think it was.
Is Sounding the Shallows.
Yeah.
And for those who are not sure, as I wasn't, what sounding actually means, that's when you actually measure the depth of the water to make sure you're not going to barge into the shore too early, or the boat's going to get ripped open, or whatever.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's what we started really with saying, isn't it? That this period, the period when now it's kind of, we're all in our own little coracles. We're not kind of in the same boat, if ever we were. We're now so many people doing so many different things. And there are rocks ahead.
Yeah.
And there are tides that will pull us about and possibly push us out to sea again, and all those sort of things. So yes, we still want to hear from you, though.
9 weeks in a boat creates some funny habits.
Yeah.
And yesterday we put our jigsaw back in its box. Some of you will know we've spent this entire period doing a Monet jigsaw puzzle. That's now back in its box.
And I did hear from someone yesterday put theirs back in their box way before us, Adrian. So
well, they got bored.
They got bored with the green.
That's not quite fair, is it? But so we will see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
then after that, every Friday.
After that, we'll see you every Friday, and we shall be sounding the shallows with you and talking about the special care. Sometime we'll talk about that.
And hopefully still laugh
needed to
as we battle through
to get through to shore, and we have loved all of it.
We have,
and
we still want to hear from you.
Yeah, we still want to hear from you.
So we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Bye bye.
Bye bye.